morning. Happy Sunday morning. And thank you, everyone, for joining us on today's special Sunday discussion. We're talking with Ian Cummer. He is one of my co-hosts of Blowback, Exposing Imperial Decline. And a lot of people express interest in talking to him about his life in Russia, why he moved to Russia, things like that. And so we're just doing a practice live stream, seeing if anyone is interested in engaging with Ian regarding his experience or really talking about anything. We're hoping that we get some questions specifically about Ian and his life in Russia, but we are open to other topics if anyone is interested. But yeah, I would like to just ask Ian maybe to start out talking about how he ended up in Russia. I know a lot of people are familiar with who Ian is and how he did end up in Russia, but probably a lot of people are not. So you used to live in California, right, Ian?
Right. So I was born in California, and I was in the military for 14 years. And so I lived in a lot of different states. I lived in North Carolina for a while. I lived in back in California for a while. I lived also in Iowa for a while because there is a Army base right on the Mississippi River between Iowa and Illinois. And then I visited Russia for the first time in the winter of 2021. So almost exactly 4 years ago. In 2 weeks, it'll actually be exactly 4 years since I came here to Moscow for the first time. And it was originally my intent to just be a tourist here. And the reason why is because Americans actually get very generous tourist visas to Russia. So you can get a 3-year multi-entry visa. You can just come and go pretty much as much as you like, 6 months at a time. Oh, we got another guest. Hello, Adam Slicer. Good to have you on the show. Now, since we do have some people already logged on, I'll just explain. I'm going to explain a little bit of how I ended up in Russia, what I'm doing in Russia, and we're streaming to several different platforms, but we can see all of your comments. So if anyone has a question, just go ahead and interject with a question, and I should see it, and I'll answer them as we go along. But back to the story. So I was originally just going to come to Russia 6 months at a time, but stay, a resident of the USA because there's no reason to go through the hassle of actually doing the immigration process. Like, well, why? But then, of course, with the way everything went in 2022 and the sanctions and just how politically uncertain everything was, and also remember we were in COVID still. Everybody loved lockdowns. Like the media was just in love with lockdowns. A lot of the political establishment was in love with lockdowns. They were even, COVID wasn't even over, and they were talking about, oh, well, let's do a climate lockdown. Like I remember the news articles, like, we could do a climate lockdown to fight climate change, to keep everybody home. I really, and I remember I had this exact feeling. I'd rather be stuck outside the USA than stuck inside the USA, which if there was another lockdown, that's what would just happen. That's what happened to people when the COVID lockdown happened. Whatever country you happen to be standing in, whether or not it was your country, that's just where you were stuck for the duration of the ban on international travel.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of stuff going on in 2022. So I decided, well, you know what? I'm just going to go ahead and sell the house, give away the car and just the other stuff and get the dog to Russia. And actually a couple weeks, well, it was officially August, but I didn't get the visa in my hand until last month. But as of several weeks ago, I'm officially a permanent, as opposed to a temporary, a permanent resident of the Russian Federation. So that's a very new update. Just I announced it on the blog, and I announced it in a couple other places, but not too many people. Just people who happen to read those posts have seen that story. So that's That's the newest thing with me.
You had a house in Idaho.
In Iowa, well, I had a house in Iowa, but since I wasn't gonna, there was no point. Also, the thing about Iowa is high property taxes, so the housing prices aren't insane like in California, but the percentage you're paying is quite a bit higher. So, I mean, if I kept that house, I'd be paying more than $3,000 a year just on the, not even counting all the other crap you have to pay just to keep a house from falling in on itself. Just the property taxes by itself is $3,000, and unless
So
I
it
was
was
and renting it out to people, I didn't want to do that. I didn't want to deal with all that. So I just sold it. Got it off my plate.
yeah.
And also had a mortgage. Also had a mortgage on it too. So if I had held on to the house, I'd be paying the mortgage.
Yeah.
It didn't make any sense if I wasn't going to live there. So yes, and this is the Russian cat. So I mentioned I brought an American dog. This is our Russian cat we have here. If you can hear him, I don't know if you can hear him in the speakers. He's purring. He likes to when I am.
And he gets along good with the American dog.
Yes. They didn't know what to think of each other at first. It's funny. Spaz. Well, one Spaz really likes cat because when I first came to Russia, and here's Ramisha. I know him from Facebook. Hello, Ramisha. Good to see you. Yes, we have a pretty decent audience here. Looks like the majority of them are on Facebook, but maybe some YouTube people. Yeah, we got a couple of YouTube people as well. It's good. So I was saying, so the dog, before I brought him to Russia, he actually stayed with some friends in North Carolina, and they have cats. So that was Spaz's first experience living with cats. So he likes cats a lot. It took a while for the cats to like Spaz because Spaz is a beagle and he's a Jack Russell Terrier mix. So he's very full of energy, and it takes some. And also, he might want to play or chase the cats when they don't want to. Cats don't necessarily want to do that, but now they get along. Now they're best friends, and it's good. Life's good with cat and dog here. So that is how I got here, and I can go. I mean, there's a lot of things I can talk about. We've got some people introducing themselves. I don't know if you have specific questions or they have specific questions, because there's a lot of things I can talk about. I can talk about financial, the financial aspects, the legal aspects, the bureaucratic aspects of coming to Russia, of staying in Russia, of traveling in Russia. There's a lot of things I can share with you guys. Okay, so it looks like Adam, if you're listening, Adam Slicer has a couple of questions. Well, you're the first one to say it, so why don't you just share the questions with us now? Do my best to answer them.
And then if he takes too long to type it out, I can ask you.
Well, I'll just keep talking while we're waiting, because we're not just going to sit and wait for him. When he is ready for a question, he can just type it out. But so as far as Americans go, okay, well, he's fast. Okay, what would you say? Here's a good question. What would you say? And he asked, for those of us who are listening and not necessarily watching the screen, what would you say are the biggest cultural differences between Americans and Russians? That's a very good question. So I would start by saying the similarities outnumber the differences, especially from the American side. We're taught that Russia is this very strange, completely alien place. It's totally different values. They're more collectivist than us. They're more this and that. So, they have this long list of very specific stereotypes of how Russians are supposedly different. And then coming to Russia, even like within the first couple weeks of being here, there's this realization that, well, one, they're not that different but then you also start to notice that there are some differences just in the way Russia operates, the way things are built. Just even the way a house or a shopping mall or a restaurant, the customs and just the way people act are different. And you realize, okay, so there are some differences. And then, so that's your first. That's probably your second realization after realizing they're similar. Then your third, I'd say possibly the biggest culture shock is realizing that the things that you see in Russia that are strange and weird, it's not actually. And then there's this realization that it's not actually Russia that's weird. It is Americans that are weird. There's ways Russia is set up that seem weird because it's not like that in America. And we come to realize, well, if you go to other European countries or you even travel to, just any normal country, that's the way it is there. And I'll give a couple examples. So one, if you go into a Russian supermarket, you'll notice the employees typically sit at the cash registers, right? In America, that's some stores will do that, but there's this big work culture thing in America that sitting is lazy. And so like bosses and business, like even small business owners will get upset and go on about, you're not allowed to sit on the job. And even customers, like especially older people, will be like, well, I came in and I saw this girl sitting at the cash register and that looks lazy. It's unprofessional. In Russia, I think most other, at least in Europe, I think it's more of the norm to just sit. Because there's no reason. It's one thing if you're stocking shelves. If you're just sitting there waiting for people to come up and give you their items to scan, there's no point in standing. Especially since, and also it's also ableist too. I know left-leaning people love that word, but this is actually a correct use of that word. It's like if there's a person, why force a person to stand? If there's an older person with bad knees or maybe a person with a disability, why deprive him of that job by saying you have to stand?
Yeah, I would definitely notice if the checkout person was sitting, it would be noticeable to me because I've just been acculturated to expect them to stand. And so, yeah, that would be a huge thing I would definitely notice had I seen it happening.
The Russian in the chat's expressing amazement at that. Yeah. So, and if you go to America, you'll see there's like Audis. Like Audis is a big grocery store. I think it's like a grocery. Audis like more of a grocery store, isn't it? And it's a German company. It's not an American company. It's a foreign.
So that's one of the big chain in Russia.
No, Audis. I was going to say it's a chain in America, but they're an exception. I've
never heard. Oh, okay, they're an exception. Yeah, no, I've never been in one of those.
But I think they're German, and that's why they're an exception because they have.
Oh, that's interesting. Yeah.
Yeah. Now we have several questions. I'm just if I don't respond right away, I'm not ignoring you. I'm just going through the questions as I get them. So that was Adam Slicer's first question. I hope I answered that at least tentatively well. And I'm going to next get to Ramisha. Her question was language barrier. How do you manage to deal with it? So I think. So Russia was outside of the military. Oh, I'm sorry. The dog sat on the cord to my camera and it went all over the place. But to answer that question is about the language barrier. So Russia was basically my first country I traveled to just as a tourist outside of the military. So traveling as an individual, of course, is different than traveling for work or as part of a group, right? You're more on your own. So I would say bare minimum, it's good to understand the Cyrillic alphabet, right? Because even if you don't speak a single word of the language, if you at least know the alphabet and the sounds all the letters make, you can read street signs, which of course is important. If you have Google Maps or whatever, you're walking around, you can see what street is this. You can read what street it is. I think even if you have your map out, and it's better to have it in Cyrillic than in English because it'll match what you actually see around you, because you can look at your maps like, oh, here's such and such street. I see the sign for such and such street, so it's just easier to navigate. And also, of course, you can't learn a whole language just studying for a few hours before you visit as a tourist, but you can know some of the basic survival phrases. You can know, and if you go to any basic service or app or app that you can install on your phone, the lessons are set up so you can do that basic. Where are some sentences and words you should know when you go into a store, go into a hospital, talk to the police, ask for directions. There's certain phrases. And now, as far as English speakers go, so there are actually a decent number of English speakers in Moscow and St. Petersburg. And I would say some of the other larger cities, because they'll have, their own universities and their night schools that people, children, of course, take language classes. University students take language classes, and adults might take, night courses, just to learn a language for fun. So you'll run into a lot of people who speak at least can have very, 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 very surface level conversation in English about like food. If you want to buy a certain product at a store, for example. But besides that, I think that also the language barrier now, of course, in the 21st century is less of a problem than it used to be, because you have these translation apps on your phone that are, they're not perfect, but for basic stuff, you can they facilitate understanding. Now, I will give a big exception to that rule, and that's banking. I don't know why it's banking in particular, but because I had to open a Russian, especially after the sanctions, when your American cards don't work anymore. I had to open a Russian account, and it was good when I had my girlfriend there who could translate. But I also had to go to a couple times by myself, and those were very frustrating conversations, because you type in some terms the other person says into your phone, and the phone AI will spit out an answer. It doesn't make any sense. It's just, I don't know. It's so, I don't actually have an exact answer for why. And I'm not the only one to say that. A lot of people, like Americans, English speakers, will come to Russia and be like, banking is so frustrating unless you're like very fluent in the language and know.
Oh, that's interesting.
Yes.
Fortunately, yeah. So your girlfriend is pretty bilingual.
Yeah. Oh, well, more than bilingual. She speaks 5 different languages. So yes.
That's helpful. That's very helpful.
Yes, it is helpful. So let's see here. I'm just going to go through. If you ask me a question and I answer it, and you want additional information, just say it in the chat. So there's language barrier, Ramisha. Now the next question is, okay, here's an interesting one. How does marriage and romance differ in Russia versus in the USA? In USA, no-fault divorce is basically a con now. So how does Russia compare on this? So no-fault, I'm not sure what he means by what you mean by no-fault to divorce being a con. So I think, of course, America is a little complicated. Actually, Russia is somewhat complicated also, because it's a federation, so individual laws can vary place to place. In America, a lot of states are moving towards no-fault divorce, as opposed to traditional divorce. And the reason why it's actually can be more fair to men too. If you have this understanding, it's like, what, women aren't helpless. They can work. They can be independent. They can open their own bank accounts. You don't need to, it's not the 1950s where you need to, even after you divorce, you need to maintain this woman. I think that's motivating the shift towards no-fault divorce, where you just part ways. You're 2 professionals, you divorce, you part ways. Your assets, the only thing that gets split between you is your assets during the marriage. Anything you had previous to the marriage, like a house or a car or inheritances, that sort of thing, aren't touched by the other person. I think I don't know, I'm not a lawyer and I haven't gotten divorced in either or married in either country, so
Yeah.
I'm not really an expert on that. I would say
Is the divorce rate about the same in Russia or worse or
it
not as
is,
bad?
and it's a very it is Russia does have a high divorce rate. I don't think it's. I mean, there's varying. They've gone into this. I mean, like every country now has like the divorce rates. They don't really use percentages anymore. They give here's the number of divorces that happens this year and the number of marriages that happens this year. It's confusing. A lot of people get divorced, but also younger people are less likely to get married now than they used to. And I think that's true also in Russia. A lot of people cohabitate without getting married. Actually, Condor specified in Russia, if you agree on not starting the property division litigation and you have no minor kids, very easy to part ways in Russia. So that's additional information. I think as far as the divorce rate, Russia does have a higher, well, actually significantly higher Muslim population, especially in those North Caucasus regions, like Dagestan and Chechnya. And those actually, believe it or not, those actually artificially inflate the divorce rate. And the reason why is because in Russia is a monogamous country. Bigamy is illegal. But under Islam, you can have up to 4 wives. And so I think, what is it, like 10% of the population is Muslim, and tends to be concentrated in those North Caucasus regions. And so what guys will do there is they will have a first wife, and then they'll get, on paper they will divorce her, and then marry the second wife. And I think the reason for that is they want, your second, third, and fourth wife to have the legal protections that come with marriage. So they do an on paper, they still cohabitate. They don't actually split. They keep living. So it's marriage fraud, basically. So if you can actually look online, if you look online at Russian Federation divorce rates by region, you can see those several Muslim majority regions actually drive up the overall divorce rate. So I think the normal actual divorces that happen in Russia are lower than what they are officially, and that's the reason.
Yeah, that's interesting.
Yeah, so there's a lot of factors, but I think they're about, as far as West, Europe, Russians, ethnic Russians, their divorce rate is if I had to guess, I'd say it's in the ballpark of people in France, people in Germany, people in the USA and Canada. Let me see here. Oh, and Condor also mentioned state support. There's, of course, welfare fraud in Russia, like everywhere else. You say, I'm a single mom. I'm a single mom. I'm helpless. I'm a traditional Muslim wife who's divorced and thrown on the street. I'm starving, so I need money. Of course. So let's see what other questions we have. Okay, so there's the question about marriage. Okay, Adam, I hope he answered your question. Or Misha looks like answered her question. Who's next?
I don't see any in the chat. I was just wondering. You talked about how the process went to move there, but like, what was really motivating you? Like in your mind, like, were you more escaping something, or were you like going to something that was very appealing, or was it a combination? You know what I'm saying?
Well, it's something I put a lot of thought into, and I think I see a lot of people in Western countries who are frustrated, and sometimes someone will reach out to me, like will DM me, like on Facebook or one of the other platforms, asking about that, about moving to Russia. I think actually escaping something or because you're unhappy is kind of the wrong reason. And the reason I say that is because the reasons you're unhappy. I mean, there's external factors for why you're unhappy, but it's also inside also. So if you move to a different place, you can and go through all the trouble of moving to a different place. You'll find you went through all that trouble and expense, and you're still unhappy.
Yeah.
So you should really. I do think people in my position, which is, and by my position, I mean people who have a military or a federal pension, and you don't have a spouse or children who are dependent on you. I mean, why not move somewhere else? You can take your time. You don't need to. You don't normally need to. You don't really need to rush either. You can find a place that you like, a country that you like. There's not, unless you're like, there's medical care that you really need. You really have to be at those medical centers giving that specific treatment that you need, and rather than, because there is a risk you transfer to a different country that they're not going to understand it, or, just there's always a risk when you transfer medical providers. But if you're just a healthy person, no dependent on you, why not experiment, travel the world, and see if there's a place that you like. I was even before I came to Russia, I started getting interested in Russian culture, even as as blogging about history, writing short stories about history. And there wasn't, even my initial interest wasn't political, right? It was just, I mean, it became political because, the world, unfortunately, Russian-Western relations deteriorated to all-time lows after that. But like I said, it wasn't originally my plan to completely uproot from the USA. Oh, so we have another Billy Bob. Did that kind of answer your question?
Well, I have a follow-up, but we can see what Adam Slicer was asking. Was that a question?
Yeah,
he has a prediction.
So prediction, since Trump is okay, so Adam has a question. Since Trump has not resolved the SMO, Ukraine-Russia war, or at least not gotten the USA out of it, what do you think will be the long-term consequences of the war on U.S. hegemony? So I think that's a very good question, and it's tough to say right now because it's too early. It's still possible for Russia to snatch the defeat from the jaws of victory, right? It's kind of anything. We're still in that anything can happen territory, right? I think I think it's really it's irreparably damaged. Well, maybe not irreparably. I should say irreversibly damaged. American hegemony. The reason I say it,
go ahead. Well, okay, I wanted to push back on his framing. It's like there's a war on U.S. hegemony. I mean, that's not what I see. Like I see the U.S., forcing conflict and wars on others.
No, I think you're misreading what he said. I think you're misreading what he said. He's asking, what is the effect of the war on U.S. hegemony? That's my
right, but no, I was quibbling. I'm quibbling. I understand what he's saying. How are the relations between these two countries getting up? But I want to just point out that it's not Russia that is, the aggressor against U.S. hegemony. It's the United States being the aggressor against Russia.
I mean, that's all. I mean, you're quibbling. You're quibbling. I'll answer his question. So, I mean,
okay, I'm sorry. I'll take it back. I'm sorry, Adam.
Yeah. So, look at. Gulf War, 1991. Soviet Cold War was over. Soviet Union broke up, right? U.S. stomped Saddam, and they really, really milked that, right? Saddam had the quote unquote fourth most powerful army in the world. And defeating him so easily showed just how strong and invincible USA was, and also, Saddam had mostly Soviet export equipment, so getting to show American firepower destroying Soviet export vehicles and equipment was very good for PR. And there wasn't really any pushback from the Soviet Union because at that point there was basically no Soviet Union to push back on that. Now, then you go into 2001, 2003, well, especially 2003 when he came back to beat up Saddam again, hyping up how easy it was and how powerful the USA was. But in the last few years, there have been cracks in that. I mean, the Taliban, well, the Iraq insurgency caused a lot of trouble. And then the Taliban, of course, really, 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 I mean, to an even greater extent than the Iraq insurgents, the Taliban really, actually, I think it's correct to say they militarily won the war because they inflicted greater human losses than NATO, which was ISAF, the International Assistance Force, was willing to tolerate. So they withdrew the troops. Obama withdrew the troops. They leaned heavier and heavier on the Afghan National Army. And the Taliban beat the Afghan National Army until Trump. By the time Trump came into office, in the first term, and I mean, they had suffered 80 to 90,000 battlefield killed, and that's a huge figure. When you ask most people, what were the casualties? Afghanistan, they'll usually say, 2,000, 3,000, not very high. Well, they're just counting the American.
Yeah,
They're not even counting the British and European casualties. They don't even count those, which are several thousand also. But then they especially don't count the Afghan National Army, our allies, who lost over 80,000 people, and that's not it's not a trivial victory for the Taliban, especially considering what they were working with. They did not have a lot to work with. Now, to bring this around to Ukraine. Russian equipment, the fact that Russia fought a NATO standard force with NATO equipment and NATO unfettered access to NATO's industry and intelligence gathering and infrastructure in general. That's specifically designed because NATO's infrastructure is specifically designed to defeat Russia, right? And then it actually fights Russia. The only thing that's not coming to the field is the actual NATO soldiers, the NATO weapons, the NATO intelligence, the NATO money, everything that Ukraine is providing the people to be killed in the war.
Yeah.
So I don't know what. So it's definitely at the point where where it's known now, and now it's not just militarily. There's the sanctions, Biden's sanctions from hell, and Russia got through that. Russia had 30-40% of the world's GDP, raw GDP, continuing to trade with it. So they did not collapse. And I think that window of countries that can stand up to the USA and live to tell the story is going to increase, not decrease, right? So Russia can do it. I think at this point, Iran can do it. A very interesting test to be see if Venezuela can do it.
Yeah.
Venezuela is in the USA's backyard. If Venezuela lives to tell, I think the problem that Trump has put himself into is he's talked so much trash about Venezuela that if he backs down, it's going to be a PR win for Venezuela because it'll be like, well, you didn't attack us because you were scared. But a worse outcome is if he attacks and it's a disaster. So it's going to be really interesting to see how that turns out. So that was a big political rant, which we.
But I mean, do you agree that the United States and Russia will be able to, improve their relations if the United States wants to? I think that's. I just think the United States is
I think that window's closing. I mean, it's interesting. It's kind of interesting because of my observation as an American in Russia for the past several years, Europe really destroyed their reputation with Russians, with the Russian government, with the Russian investor class. Anybody who had money invested in Europe got their fingers burned, right? And those are the people who they hurt the Russians who like Europe the most, right? It's like they targeted those people specifically, people who like to travel to Europe, people who invest money in European things. They were the ones who got burned. I think what saved the USA in part was because one, most American companies did not divest from Russia. About 3/4 of American companies did not leave Russia. They some of them said they did and then stayed, like Burger King. So the majority just stayed. And also, I think the USA also has a reputation as kind of a maverick to begin with. It's kind of like, well, they're very. It's known that the USA is very pragmatic and self-serving. So that was expected. With Europe, Europe was really Germany and all those people were really seen as Russia's friends. So it was more of it was more of a shock, is more of a betrayal, and that's harder to come back from. So I think when Trump came in, he had the chance to turn that around and fix things. But I think Trump's getting dangerously close to where the USA's bridges will be burned as well.
Yeah, it could be. I mean, he definitely would like to peel them away from China, I think, and so, but it's a tough situation because the EU doesn't want to agree to anything that is going to, be enough of an enticement to peel Russia from China. Like the EU and Ukraine aren't going to agree to anything. So it's a very difficult place. But yeah, there does seem like there's a faction within Russia and within the United States that are all for increasing, ending the sanctions, increasing economic cooperation, etc. But there are other forces, that oppose that. And so it'll be interesting to see what Trump can do with his peace plan.
Yeah. So I want to steer it a little bit. So I hope I answered Adam's question. I want to steer it a little bit back to the personal because we argue about politics every show, right?
No, that's fine.
Yeah, I don't want to get too deep into politics. We beat that dead horse twice a week. So I can answer political questions, but let's try to ask me something that you can't find on Google. That's how I would like people to look at this show. Something that you can.
Are you so you get a pension from the military, and the sanctions have not caused that you can't spend U.S. dollars in Russia? Like you're able to convert your dollars to rubles.
If you have dollar, the dollar is a powerful currency. If you have dollars in your hand, anybody will be very glad to accept those dollars. It will relieve you of those dollars. Anybody in the world will be happy to do that. The issue is the bank transfers. So as of now, with very few exceptions, the average person cannot transfer directly from an American bank to a Russian bank or vice versa. You have to go through a third party. And there are, fortunately, legal ways to do that, right? So if you have an account in a neutral country like Armenia or Azerbaijan or Kazakhstan, you can transfer it to yourself. Or if you have a reliable family member and friend in those countries, you can transfer it. You can also use cryptocurrency because cryptocurrency is a stateless, probably the first stateless currency in last several thousand years. And so you can sell your dollars for a cryptocurrency like Bitcoin, and then you can sell your cryptocurrency and receive rubles from a Russian bank or financial institution. So to succinctly answer the question, no, you cannot transfer directly from an American bank to a Russian bank, but you can use an intermediary.
And there's nothing illegal about that. Yeah. Oh, that's good information. Now, I was going to ask you about citizenship. And are you able to have dual citizenship? But if you wanted, Ramisha was asking you about, Russian culture. And are you listening to Russian music?
Yes, so there's a question from Ramisha. If I listen to, so I did start listening to Russian music. Actually, I just recently opened a Russian bank account at Sberbank, and I got the sales girl roped me into this this premium membership where I get the streaming where I have to pay. It's not free. I was like, oh my gosh, I have to pay $1 a month for this service. As I got a Russian movie streaming service, and I got a Russian music streaming service. So I started listening to Russian pop music, and yes, Shaman is on there. I can't say I'm a huge fan of Shaman. He's a very patriotic guy for sure. I can't say I don't have any. Let's just say I don't have any of his songs on my playlist. And, oh, I guess well, Condor says he is gay. Well, there's nothing wrong with being gay. Okay, so here's another question from Adam. So Adam, it's good to have so many questions. Glad you're keeping the discussion going. So culture question. The internet joke is Slavs, to include Russia, love Warhammer 40K because it's relatable. What's the actual attitude towards it and popularity of it? So that's actually a very good question. So Warhammer 40K, for listeners who don't know what that is, it's a British company called Games Workshop that started these tabletop games where you have these plastic figures that you paint in their armies, and then you fight your friends. You can fight your friends' armies on the table. You have dice and you have rulers. So it's a war game that you play on a table. And it of course, this brand expanded to include video games, books, magazines. It's just this whole there's this whole subculture, kind of nerdy subculture to it, and it's in the 1990s and 2000s, it started getting big, of course, in Eastern Europe, because those British plastic models are kind of expensive. I mean, they can be like $2 or $3 just for one, or even $10 just for one small soldier. They're a little too expensive for most people in those countries. But they get into the books. Like, the books are popular. They translate those books into Russian and I guess Bulgarian or whatever. Up until recently, Ukrainian also. And also what really made those games big is the invention of 3D printing. Because now, especially in countries where they don't really care very much about copyright enforcement, you can just 3D print your own soldiers instead of paying $100 or $200 to this company. You just print them out on your home printer, or you can buy them from someone else who printed them, who charges a lot less. And what's interesting about the war in Ukraine, I think a historical first is this is the first time in history when there's been so many Warhammer 40K references on both sides. Like, there have been orcs, there have been space marines, there have been, like, if you they'll actually have units and people that will put, like, Russians will have the orc symbols on their vehicles and uniforms. Some of them will have space marines. Like, I think people just the army that they like in the game, they'll put the symbols of it on their own helmets and vehicles. So and both sides do that, not just Russians or Ukrainians. Both sides do that. And let me see here. So, Adam, I hope I answered that question on Warhammer 40K. And Arvind Malia, who is someone I know back in California, yes, I am actually in Russia right now. I am in Moscow right now. And now we have Zetunia. I'm sorry if I'm mispronouncing that. Am I fluent in Russian? Well, fluent is a very strong word. Let's say that. I can watch Russian movies and mostly understand what's going on. I can have basic conversations with people. If you get, especially topics that I spend a lot of time talking about, right? With military topics, political topics, I can very easily follow the conversation. If you get into things like botany or some field that I don't talk about when there's a vocab, because every topic has its own vocabulary. So you start straying outside of the topics I normally think and talk about. it
So
can
you're
get
not
difficult.
big into botany. Botany's not your primary
Well,
endeavor.
like my girlfriend
Okay.
will ask me, what is that flower in English? And I'll be like, I don't know. I don't even
But
know. Right. It's like,
you're definitely putting in some effort to learn the language, which is commendable. So I know Zatunia is from Puerto Rico, and I was there for 3 years, and I can get by with just speaking English. And so I did not put in a lot of effort to learn Spanish, and shame on me. And so it's great. It's great that you're putting the effort. I mean, that's what you're supposed to do, especially if you have interest in actually living in that country long term. What about the citizenship though? Are there can you be a dual Russian U.S. citizen, or do they make you choose? Does Russia make
yes.
you choose, or does the United States make you
The attitude
choose?
the attitude's kind of the same in Russia. There's not a law against having dual citizenship. Russia does want taxes from their citizens, so it's kind of a similar process to the USA, where if you don't want to pay Russian tax, if like a Russian citizen doesn't want to pay Russian taxes anymore, they have to renounce their citizenship, which people do. Like the same with the USA. If you don't want to be on the hook for taxes, people just renounce their citizenship and switch to a different country entirely. Some people do that. But there's no law against it. I know some like Ukraine does that, and I think they're just now starting to try to relax that rule, because it was just a rule everybody was ignoring. Like, I mean, because really, if you go to a different country and get their citizenship, who's going to stop you from doing that? It's kind of a pointless law to have. So Ukraine even is
Okay.
relaxing that law on dual citizenship. So the law is, there's a 5-year naturalization period,
Which
and
is
it's
the
three
same as the
years.
U.S.
And it's 3 years if you're married to someone who's a citizen. So, and to yes, and Tracy. Hi Tracy, good to see you. Did they talk about Donald Trump there? They do talk about American politics. They do just talk about Trump and Biden, or whoever the president is at the moment. Um, I wouldn't say it's correct to say people like Trump. I do think they like. Maybe they take Trump more seriously than Biden, just because Trump is more awake than Biden was. Biden was asleep for most of his term. Let's be honest. But I know it's a very common criticism that Trump and Putin are best buddies. He's a puppet of Putin, or he likes Russia too much. I don't think there's really there's no basis for saying that. I don't think, because the reality is that the USA is still helping Ukraine and is still sanctioning Russia and causing a lot of grief for Russia. So they're not friends, and Trump hasn't changed any of that. So there's no reason for them to
I'm
like.
sure they appreciated Trump's rhetoric about, because he did take a lot of political heat in his first term of trying to, maintain good relations with Russia. He took a lot of heat, and the whole Russiagate thing. And so I'm sure Russians appreciated, his efforts. But as things drag on, I'm sure the Russian people are kind of getting, frustrated with the lack of any kind of actual policy change or any headway with dealing with the war.
I think what's frustrating everybody, not just Russians, but in Europe, and other countries too, is that Trump's kind of seemed to change his mind several times. Like he did that big meeting with Putin and Putin's ministers, not just Putin. It was a big meeting. It's a bunch of different people um, in Anchorage,
Yeah.
and then after that, he's like, "Oh, Russia and the USA are kind of on the same page. Everything's good." And then he had that meeting with Zelensky and the European, like they had that meme of all of the Europeans sitting in the Oval Office like school children. And then after that, Trump apparently changed his mind again. So yeah, that's the problem with him. Now we got a question from Irvin here. I said Arvind is just someone I grew up with, actually. Ian, my wife's Karen's grandfather came from now Belarus. Have you got used to the food and language? Karen used to make all the traditional dishes. Well, so fun thing about Belarus is because they have a diplomatic agreement between Russia and Belarus. It's called the Union State. So actually, I can now visit Belarus with my Russian documents, which is very cool. I'm actually I want to come see Minsk and maybe the countryside in Belarus, maybe in the spring at some point. So I definitely want to do that, and I'm able to. There is some. The food is different. I would say in the long run, the food, Russian food and Belarusian food is. My girlfriend's actually half Belarusian, so her dishes are Belarusian. Like her salads and her meat dishes that she makes are Belarusian or Belarusian influenced. It does take some getting used to, but I think also I came to realize that American food is just so unhealthy. Like everything's so processed, everything's got so much chemicals and sweeteners and corn syrup, all this stuff in it. And so me, I'm obviously not obese, right? I'm not a big person, but I think I did actually gain weight in Russia because I think it is an effect of American cuisine. It makes people fatter than they should be or skinnier than they should be because it's because of those sweeteners and artificial just junk they put in everything, even bread. Like if you look at the ingredients for a loaf of bread, it's got all this junk in it. It's like, well, why?
Preservatives.
Right. So I've been eating a lot more potatoes and tomatoes and salads and just my diet is here. I'd say it's different. I'd say it's better than it was too. So I hope I answered that question well.
So Minsk is, I heard, a good Soviet city, very clean. I've never been there either, obviously, but I had a coworker, a Belarusian coworker, and of course she was not happy with the government, and she was complaining that the Belarusian, president had been in there for 30 years, and I'm like, well, I think he's doing something right, but that's great.
Well,
yeah, I would love to hear your thoughts about Minsk when you visit.
Well, yeah. So about the politics. So the politics. Well, so we've got this idea in America. And I think actually a lot of Western countries copied the USA, or the USA influenced their public perception of politics. So we have this idea that started with. So George Washington, our first president, started this tradition of he didn't want to be in office more than 2 terms for 8 years, right? Because he personally felt like he'd be too much like a king if he was basically in office for life. So he voluntarily stepped down. That became. It wasn't a law, by the way. It wasn't a requirement for people. It's just everybody followed that convention until the second FDR, not Teddy Roosevelt, Franklin Roosevelt. He was in for 4 terms, and he died in office on his 4th term. And then that's when I forget which constitutional amendment, where they made it an actual constitutional amendment. You can only serve 2 terms. Now in Russia and Belarus, in Eastern Europe, I think even world, it's not even just an Eastern Europe thing, it's worldwide. Most places there's this feeling that if you have a leader or an administration that's not corrupt and bad and incompetent, you should just be grateful you found a leader who's not corrupt, bad, and incompetent, and keep that person as long as you can. And also there's this perception, I've had people tell me this too, there's this perception that when you have a president and his minions who've been in office for a while, in their first term, they steal what they want to steal, but after they already have what they want, so they stop stealing so much. But if you keep putting new people in office, they all keep stealing. So it's just, there's more grift. So there's this stereotype that if you switch people out a lot, there's less corruption. But if you think about it, it could be the opposite. It causes more corruption. And if you actually look, and it's even on Wikipedia, like it's not even like a secret. If you look at Franklin Roosevelt's fourth term, by that point, people like even in the Democratic Party, even in his own party, people were getting angry with him because he was just sitting on the top position forever, like for life, literally, for his whole life is sitting as the president of the United States. And it's like, it's our turn to be president. It's our turn to get into the Oval Office and steal, right? And you sitting there for 12 years is making everybody else wait. And there wasn't any other actual reason they were upset with him. That was the main reason they were upset with him. So yeah, that was a bit of a tangent, but yes, about Belarus, about the political differences. Now, there's one question from Adam Slicer. So guys, I am on as long as you guys have questions, so there's no time limit here. Come and go as you please, but I'll be on as long as we need to be. But to answer this question, what are some media available in English for Americans to better understand Russian POV and culture? So I am going to get into translating memoirs. It's a project of mine that I'm probably going to start within the next couple of months, and I will start posting them online. And I'll create a dedicated web blog for them, for these memoirs and books that I translate from Russian, so people can see. I'm not going to translate Dostoevsky or Tolstoy, authors that have already been translated 100 times. I'm going to find really obscure, interesting authors that I think are important to see, for us to see their perspectives. But for right now, as far as books and movies, movies are a good place to start. I'd say if there's any one thing that was amazing about the Soviet period, it was their film industry, right? And so if you go to Mosfilm and Lenfilm, the Moscow and the Leningrad film studios, they both have YouTube channels where they upload their movies and serials with with English subtitles. So very good, with professionally done English subtitles. So you can get that, and they have playlists, and you can even just go and say, what are the top 10, action movies or romance movies or historical dramas, in the Soviet period. So you can kind of do your research or just play around on their channel and find what you like. So I think Soviet movies are really the best place to start for appreciating the culture. And I have not seen The Shield and the Sword. Just reading Ramesh's comments. He said, would you recommend The Shield and the Sword? I'll have to look into that. I have not seen that movie. Condor agrees with me. She recommends Soviet movies. They're absolutely great. Now, also, a good way to, if you're into learning languages, it's a good way to visit Russia. If you can take the time, you can take a summer course or just a semester of language courses where you can actually get a student visa. And it depends what country you're from too. I think they're all basically the same ways student visas work. But you can take a Russian language course in Moscow and live in a dormitory or rent an apartment if you have the money to do that. But if you don't, you can basically pay a nominal fee for a dormitory, take a Russian language course, see the city, have a lot of free time, and but also learn about the culture. Because I've taken several Russian language courses here and gone through several textbooks, and they're all very culturally oriented. So if you finish a textbook from cover to cover, you won't just be better at language. You'll also learn about their famous writers, their famous. You'll learn Russian history, Russian culture, significant people in Russian history. So it's also a great way, though time-consuming way, to consume the culture. Let's see what other I have. I see we have new comments. No, do I? Oh, Battleship Potemkin is a good one. Yes. So Potemkin, I think, is Eisenstein's best movie. My opinion of Eisenstein is very famous, and of course, in America, I think basically every American film student at least knows who Eisenstein is. Um, I think we do fixate on him too much. And the reason why, well, no, because I'm not saying he's bad. No, because he is one of my favorite artists for sure. Um, I think we have this perception of Russia and the Soviet Union to be very monolithic. So it's kind of interesting how we cherry pick certain figures from Russian culture. And I
Yeah.
think give undue attention because I think because Eisenstein was definitely probably the greatest of that first generation of Russian artists in the silent film era. His problem, I think, and this is clear in his later movies, he never adapted well to sound. Sound completely changed the way movies were. They became less like a play on a stage, more personal. You know, you're just watching people in their living room in their apartments having a casual. You know, it completely changed the art form, and he wasn't quite able to adapt to that. Which is why I say we fixate on too much, because in those later movies there are other Soviet movies that were very modern for their time. In the 1930s, you know, there was already a very healthy talkie film industry in the Soviet Union. But yes, the Condor mentioned Ivan the Terrible. I've not actually seen Ivan the Terrible, though. It's one of his most famous movies, Eisenstein's most famous movies as well. Okay, what else you guys got for me? We've talked about movies.
What's the weather like now? I mean, it's going to be getting cold. Is this going to be a bad winter? Is that true? A cold winter, I should say.
It's hard to say. So I think so. I lived in Iowa for about 4 years before I came here, so I wasn't a stranger to cold winters. I think it can be a bad sign when there's no snow on the ground, when snow and cold weather comes late, because that can mean you have late winter. You can very often means it'll be a long winter. So right now at the end of November, we've had some snow, but it melts right away because it's rarely gotten below freezing. So there's just no snow on the ground.
Oh, so
It's
mild
not,
so far.
yeah, it's been mild so far, which, well, sometimes that can be bad because that can mean you can still have snow on the ground in May. I'll never forget. I think when I was here, I think this was 2 years ago. We had snow in June. I was like, "Are you serious? Like it's snow in June? Are you kidding me?"
Huh.
Not June. Maybe it was late May. It was, but yeah. Crimea. Now we have a dacha in Crimea. So I did a couple episodes of this show in Crimea. And it's warm there still. It's probably like 13 or 14 degrees Celsius there during the day.
That doesn't mean anything to anyone, Ian.
Right? Yeah, it doesn't really make it's probably like high 50s.
What's the
Fahrenheit.
Kelvin? You got to tell
Well,
us Kelvin.
Right. So let me see here. Celsius to Fahrenheit. Let's see.
So Scott Ritter, of course, does a lot of talking about improving Russian Western relations, and his wife I think is from Georgia, but he's definitely a big proponent. He has an entire outreach to try and facilitate better understandings between Russia people and people in the United States. Do you do you support that, and you kind of do the same thing?
I encourage people to have good relations. I think the first step is just to be open to it. I think that's the problem. People, you have to want open relationship. But yes, I encourage people to talk to each other, and with the internet, it's easier than ever, but people don't do it. It's weird. It's because it's easier than ever to reach out to, break through an iron curtain and talk to whoever you want in the world for the most part, except North Korea, because North Korea doesn't really, they've restricted the internet. But most other places besides North Korea, it's somewhat easy to talk to people. But we don't, because it's like we're more cemented in our echo chambers than we used to be, and it's
and a lot of the problem is, decades and generations of Cold War anti-Russian propaganda. I mean, literally a century of anti-Russian propaganda has probably, ruined a lot of people's minds and closed them off to discussion. Tracy Ann has a great question for you, Ian.
Well, I'm still figuring out my healthcare because I need to go to the. I need to figure. I don't understand the process. I am entitled to public health care, but I don't understand the process to get registered. I've been procrastinating. I do hope to.
Because you're healthy.
Right. To get registered, to not procrastinate, because you never know. God forbid you need an ambulance or something. But I have just been to private healthcare. Like I actually had a root canal last year, which wasn't fun. But I've had 2 root canals in my life. The first root canal was in America in 2018, I think it was, and that was I saw the bill. I didn't pay because it was under, the military health insurance. It was under TRICARE. Yeah. So I think it was over, if I remember correctly, it was over $6,000 or $7,000 in total. I got a root canal in Moscow, and I just paid out of pocket. It was 2 appointments. I paid 3,000 rubles each appointment, so 6,000 rubles total. And in dollars, that's oh my gosh, it's less than $100. It was very cheap. Even when you take into account the fact that Russian wages are lower than in America, is still a lot cheaper. I mean, how many Americans have $6,000 just laying around if they don't have insurance? The average person in America cannot pay a $6,000 dental bill. But the average Russian can pay 6,000 rubles.
That was also private health care, and probably a lot of Russians have access to the public alternative.
The problem with Russian public health care is that, well, one, you might be waiting a very long time, and they're understaffed and underpaid. So it's common for doctors to actually have 2 jobs to moonlight, because a public job has a good pension, but the private job pays more. So a lot of doctors have 2 different jobs to get the pension and the better paycheck. So private healthcare will probably be better, and you'll wait a lot less, but it's still affordable. And I think what the public healthcare system does is it forces private healthcare to be cheaper, because in America there's no competitor, right? If people don't have another choice, you just have to go to a private hospital and pay whatever they demand of you. But in a normal country that has public health care,
there's a little bit of competition.
Private health care can charge more. They could charge like 2 or 3 times more. Like, okay, I know that this procedure at a public health care facility would cost $50, but my premium service will charge $100, right? Or even maybe $150. But you can't charge 1,000 or 10,000 or 100,000. No one's going to pay that. It's going to be like, it's ridiculous. I'll go sit and wait 6 hours at the public clinic, because I'm not going to pay $10,000 for something that I can get for free.
Which is one reason why the United States, insurance lobby really tries hard not to get a public option. They really are opposed to a public option, because it would be competition. It would bring prices down, bring profits down. No doubt
I did go to, now for the immigration process, I did have to get certain tests. Like I had to get, I forget what that scan is called. You get your lungs scanned. They test for tuberculosis. and
Yeah.
HIV and all the the bad diseases, and drugs and all that stuff. So I had to pay for it because I wasn't a citizen, obviously. But I did it in mostly public hospitals, and like they wasn't anything wrong with them. They were clean. They weren't bad places. So I fortunately not needed any serious care here, but my experience with the healthcare system hasn't been bad so far. I think like everywhere else, when you go private, you're also kind of paying I think there's a tendency to there's actually, I saw this on Russian social media actually last week. I saw it was a Russian news story. This woman with stage 4 cancer went into a hospital with a bag of money, like a huge bag of money, and they're like, well, you have stage 4 cancer. There's nothing that we can do for you. And she's like, I have all this money and it doesn't. And she like threw it on the, she just threw it on the floor. It's like, yeah, well, I have all this money and it doesn't do me any good. I think so. I think that's, I think her frustration is kind of what we all feel when we're like, oh, there's something very wrong with me. I don't want to be cheap. I want to pay. And I have that comfort that I paid more for this service. Maybe it'll give me better odds of getting through whatever this disease I have is.
Yeah. I mean, she could put it towards research, and then maybe future generations would, benefit from that research. I mean, I've heard China has some breakthroughs, or maybe it was Russia that had some breakthroughs with the cancer vaccine, or maybe it was Russia that authorized the use of this Chinese cancer vaccine. But anyway, there are some.
I do think Americans who are willing to look can find some pretty extraordinary medical centers in Moscow and St. Petersburg that, of course, are going to charge a lot less than an American one would. And they're experimental procedures, and they just want, and it's good PR too to say, oh, because like I remember there was this American girl. She's like, I don't remember how old she was. She's like 12 or something. And she's a very unusual case. She has a birthmark, just coal black she's white, and she has this coal black birthmark that covers her entire face, which needless to say is very, it's disconcerting. It's very serious. Doesn't look nice. So she's been getting these procedures in St. Petersburg, where it's like this laser surgery where they gradually erase this birthmark so it matches the rest of her skin. And that's a procedure this American girl is getting in Russia. So I think it's something, if you have some strange disorder or illness or something pretty extreme, you can definitely look in Russia, and they might be interested in having you because it's an unusual.
And it's definitely going to be
have an American wants to come to
less expensive than in the U.S. if the U.S. would even try. And insurance wouldn't cover that anyway.
Yes, I don't know. I don't remember her name, but I do remember seeing the story. Maybe it is the name of the girl. Okay, guys, so we've talked about healthcare. Now we've had surprisingly little. I was expecting more immigration questions. I guess now that Trump is president, everybody loves Trump. Trump's the greatest president we've ever had. Nobody wants to come to Russia anymore. Actually, no, I'm going to bring that up. I actually knew a guy in Moscow who was in trouble for January 6th, actually. And he was just a guy. I guess he'd been at the protests, and he went. And he had a Russian wife and a Russian family, and so it was easy for him to get to Russia. So he just went to Russia while they were. So he wouldn't get arrested under Biden, and he actually got a pardon from Trump because Trump pardoned him. He actually. I know someone who got a presidential pardon and came back to the USA after that. Tell him.
I wish he'd pardon Snowden. Do you ever bump into him at the supermarket?
I don't. I've wondered. I've run into a couple of people. I actually for Thanksgiving I went to this American club in Moscow, and they bring in various guest speakers for these parties. So for Thanksgiving, a few days ago, we actually had Victor Boot come, and the Merchant of Death. We all remember the
Yeah.
Merchant of Death. He actually
Nicolas
came and spoke
Cage.
too.
Nick Cage.
Yes, and what's interesting, yes, with Nicolas Cage. What was interesting about Victor Boot is that, I don't remember how long was he in prison. He was in there for years and years and years. He was,
A decade, maybe.
yeah, it was a long time. He was in American prison, but I don't remember exactly what he said. He basically said that America and Russia don't need to be enemies. It's
Yeah.
not beneficial for America and Russia to be enemies. So it was kind of interesting to listen to someone who was railroaded and locked up in American prison, who's surprisingly not bitter about it and still preaching good relations. Of course, he's in the Duma. He's a politician now. It's I don't think I think if he truly was really bitter towards it, I don't think he doesn't seem bitter towards Americans for it, which is interesting. We've also had. Oh my gosh, I'm drawing a blank on her name. What was the name? Maria something.
Zakharova.
No, it's the Russian woman who went to prison also. Can't remember his last name now. Maria.
Oh, she was the young redhead that was all involved with the NRA and the libertarians.
And I think she was blonde. Butina, yes, Butina. Maria Butina.
Okay.
She
blonde.
spoke
Okay.
at, yes, I've met her also. And yeah, so that was interesting.
She got caught up in Russiagate. She got caught up in the Russiagate thing.
Well, I think what happened. So Maria Butina, like you said, was in the. I think she wasn't anybody in particular. I think she was just a very ambitious person who came to the USA because the USA has a reputation of, if you want to make it big in the world, if you're very motivated and you can come, you can fulfill the American dream, the capitalist dream, come to America and make it big. And I think that's what she wanted to do. She's very ambitious. She was really aggressively networking with people. She clicked on that the NRA guys who are not hostile to Russia. They can even find the Russians interesting, right? So she kind of fell into those middle class and upper middle class Republican conservative people who are into the NRA and guns and stuff, and she really got into that culture. I think what got I don't think she's a spy. I don't think she actually did anything. Yeah. I think she may have exaggerated her Russian connections, especially because, from what I understand, there was some alcohol involved in some of these incidents. I'm best friends with Putin. It's just a thing. Imagine yourself when you're out at a party with friends. You're like, well, yeah, of course I'm best friends with Putin. We hang out all the time. Yeah, Lavrov, yeah, he's a great guy. I talk to him all the time. Maybe exaggerating your political connections. And unfortunately, when Trump, remember how upset everybody was when Trump was elected the first time? Like, it really felt like the sky was falling, right? And I think they really just wanted to crucify somebody. They couldn't crucify Trump because he was president for the moment. And unfortunately, Maria Butina was just an easy person to crucify in those weeks after the election. I think that's what. I remember reading those news articles. I was like, what did she even do that's illegal? It's like, oh, well, she was just, it's like, I don't see any evidence saying I'm best buds with Putin isn't a crime. I mean, I can say I'm best buds with Putin. Does that mean I'm a criminal if I exaggerate my relationship with Putin?
There was a witch hunt, and a lot of innocent people got caught up in these false narratives that were being spun to try and make this case that Trump and Russia had some kind of deal, and it was all bullshit. And anybody with any kind of brain understood that from the very beginning, but which means very few people got it. Basically,
yeah, they were really just out for blood, and unfortunately, some people
There was a Greek guy. I forget the Greek guy's name. There was Page. Page was actually, an informant for the CIA, and they turned on him and pretended that he was a double agent. I mean, there was, so many innocent people, and Butina was another one of them.
I remember like there was this CNN article, and they were like, it was actually like misogynist. It's just like, they like made her sound like she was like seducing Republican men. And
right. Red Sparrow. She was a Red Sparrow.
Yeah. Speculating about her love life and stuff. It's just like, how is this like a mainstream news article? It sounds like a tabloid, like a celebrity tabloid about, Angelina Jolie having a new boyfriend. It was so insane. Yeah, so what else, guys? Okay, so we've had a great turnout here. We had a lot of comments. And I can see the audience participation on the main screen because we have some people from Facebook and YouTube here. It's actually a pretty good turnout tonight.
Yeah.
I'm really happy. And it seems like most of the people who said they were going to show up actually did, which is really cool. And what else you guys got? We have any other questions? I'm surprised, like I said, I'm surprised no one asked about immigration, too much about immigration. Adam, okay, we have a question from on the immigration front. I think people wanted to run from Biden administration under Trump. I think there's a new attitude of political engagement. The topic of immigrating to Russia might resume. Well, so I think, Adam, you are right, because like the guy I knew who was got pardoned, and he was Russia's biggest patriot until Trump pardoned him. Then he came back to America. I think that was the case with people. I think that happens every administration. So I remember when Trump became president, we had the opposite happen. All the leftist people were like, Trump is literally Hitler. He's a dictator. I'm going to run away to Canada. How many of those people actually went to Canada? I mean, some did. A few. What's that lesbian woman with the short hair? What's her name?
Oh, on MSNBC.
Yeah.
I forget.
You know who I mean, though. That one weird woman. Actually, she apparently did go to Canada. So a few of those celebrities did actually apparently make good their threat and go to Canada. But most,
her name.
It's just the thing most people say.
She was the number one promoter of Russiagate, and they paid her so much. MSNBC paid her so much to push that. You got a lot more questions here. So, if you go to Belarus, you got to go to Velakiyaka-Nazkovsk.
Velakiyaka-Nazkovsk. Oh, yeah.
And then books. Do you have any books? Have you written any books? I know you've got your blog.
So I have some. I'll probably have some books out this year. I had a sci-fi novel published at one point. I unpublished it because was just my creative tastes changed. So and that's that's the problem. My creative I think that's what has caused me to not publish any new books in the last couple of years because I don't like my old books. And my tastes keep changing. But I think this year I finally settled, so we're going to see some new books for me, some new projects for me, and I'll announce them here on the podcast as well. So
what's the name of your blog? It's
Also, it's reading, and I shared it in the description of this video. So if you so I have Reading Junkie, which is the blog, and it's my actual WordPress blog that I own. I can't be banned from it because it's mine. And I have Substack, which I added, as well as the Facebook group. I have a Facebook group, and a Buy Me a Coffee. Oh, and let me see. We got a couple more. It's just all right. So again, it's great. And like I said, there's no time limit here, however long. And Billy Bob, I don't want you to get low blood sugar.
I can last a few more questions.
Okay, great. And like I said, I'll stick around for however long I need to. But Okay, so it's just a comment from Adam on the January Sixers. Leo Kelly's released from prison. Actually spoke at a Republican dinner in Scott County. Scott County, is that in Iowa? Because I have a Scott County in Iowa. But anyway, the political climate definitely changed post-Trump. I agree. I think it's changed. It's going to be it'll be interesting if it goes anywhere, though. I don't know. And Ramisha says, "I love you to start a vlog channel." And you say vlog, is that a platform?
No, that's like just a video log.
No,
like,
I can, because I was thinking of doing, because we have the StreamYard, I can even do live streams walking around the city. I'm doing this live stream in my house just because we're just mostly talking about, political and immigration stuff. I can even do live streams on the street, just in different places. But yeah, so Adam, yeah, Davenport. I didn't remember if you were from there, but yeah, I used to live in Davenport. I worked on Rock Island, which is the base on the Illinois side of the river, but it's there. And Davenport is where I lived in Scott County. That's how I recognize the name. But yes. Okay, what else? But yeah, I can definitely do some more vlogs if that's what interests the people. So Adam's talking about Iowa. What's interesting to me about Iowa is that, because I lived there for 4 years. I'm a California boy, but I lived there for 4 years. What's interesting to me is how, well, basically, almost, it seems like 60, or maybe this is confirmation bias or just the social clicks I was in, but it really seemed like 60 or 65% of the people under 30 and definitely under 25 were liberal progressives. And the weird part is, like, the people over 65 are also progressive. Like, you have these boomers putting, rainbow flags and stuff in their, their Facebook profiles. And it was weird how older people who are stereotypically socially bigoted and slow to change all embraced this, woke progressivism that we have. And so as far as the lasting, and I bring that up because it's interesting to see what the lasting changes to the American political life that Trump is going to bring, because it's really hard for me to gauge how people feel in those different age groups. And I haven't set foot in the USA since summer 2022. So it's been more than 2 years now, and even just in that short time, I feel like I'm out of touch already with what's going on in America. It's just like I feel like sometimes it looks like I'm looking through a telescope at Mars or a different planet. It's like, what is going on there? It's hard to say.
Well, there's a big split in MAGA.
There is.
You got the Nick Fuentes. Anyway,
Mm-hmm.
What are your long-term plans, Ian? What are your intentions towards your wonderful girlfriend?
So I have to go. So I actually have an appointment at the American Embassy to get a document to show I'm not already married in the USA. That's required by Russian law. You have to prove that you're not a bigamist.
So your intentions are honorable.
Right. Some people like to do that. Some people think having one wife is so much fun. They want a second wife and a third wife, and collect wives in different countries. So you have to prove you're not doing that. And the document, the residence document I have now, does not have an expiration date, so I can just stay indefinitely at this point with the residence permit I have now. I might look into getting a Russian passport. There would be benefits to having a Russian passport. One of those benefits being I can go to China and Iran without a visa, because Russian citizens have visa-free travel with, or maybe, don't quote me on the Iran part. Maybe it's an e-visa, but I remember it's a very simplified process. So the interesting thing about the Russian passport's desirable because I don't think it's as strong as the American passport, but it overlaps with the American. Not it interconnects with the American passport very well. All the countries that you can't get into with the American passport, you can mostly get into with the Russian one. So it's because you have to. Unfortunately, it's just the way the world's split up into political blocks. If you have a strong passport from one block and you get a passport from the other block, that means you can go almost anywhere. So it's if the opportunity presents itself to get a Russian passport, I probably will.
So, and you purchased a residence in Crimea, and so you're renting in Moscow, but
no, we're not renting. She owns the apartment,
okay.
and it's so most. I would say not all, but the majority of families in Russia have, at least the ones who didn't lose it, get scammed out of it. Most families have a Soviet era apartment because after the Soviets period ended and they decommunized, they issued certificates for they actually passed ownership to those because you technically did not own. I mean, you couldn't be kicked out, but you didn't technically own your state apartment under communism. But after they became capitalists, they gave the ownership to. So you did actually literally own those apartments. And so she has that.
Nice.
Right. So it's not actually a Soviet apartment. It was built in the 1990s, but they traded an apartment, got this, so they traded a couple. And so this is an apartment they own, and it's a nice apartment.
So you plan on maintaining dual residence, and going back and forth as however you see fit, kind of.
Well, with property, I don't think property is ever. I don't think we're in a bubble. I don't think property values are ever going to go down in Russia. Even if they have currency troubles or economic troubles, it's not going to cause property values to decline. They're just going to keep going up. So there's no reason to get rid of property. So yeah, that's the plan. We'll have and Moscow is nice. I mean, we can spend holidays in Moscow and then go out to the countryside in Crimea the rest of the time. It's like, why not?
Avoid the bitter winters if there are any.
But with that said, the winter's bitter, but New Year's is great. I don't think there's a better place to spend New Year's than in Moscow. It's a classic place to be to see the holiday decorations, to see the festivities, and then of course spend New Year's Eve in Moscow. I don't think there's a better place to be than here. All right, guys. So wow, so we got a ton of reactions on social media to the platforms we're streaming to. We got a bunch of people still viewing. So you have a large audience, but they're quiet. Who we have any other questions? Because I'm running out because there's things I can talk about. I just don't know what you guys are interested in. There's still topics I can talk about. I can talk about visas. I can talk about residency. I just don't know what the people want.
Yes, which is kind of a problem on our program too.
Because we have a large audience, I don't want to just hang up on it. We have a bunch of people still watching. Billy Bob, do you have a question? Maybe you can.
Well, we talked about your long-term plans, and so that's interesting that you're trying to go through the process of getting married, and they got to make sure that you're not already previously married, and then you have family in the United States, but you don't own any property. Now, when do you plan on returning, visiting? Any concrete thoughts on that, or you just kind of see how it goes?
See how it goes. There's no reason for me to.
Have you ever had any kind of problems when you do travel back? People giving you a hard time?
Well, that was one of my main motivations for emigrating, as opposed to just staying here as a tourist. Because, like I said, there's logistically no reason for me to be an immigrant to Russia because I'm financially independent. I could just keep getting those 3-year tourist visas. There wasn't actually a pressing need for me to do it. Part of the reason I did it was because I didn't really feel that comfortable traveling back and forth between Russia and the USA. I've never had trouble at the border. The couple times I did go through, I didn't have trouble at the border, but I've heard horror stories like Glenn Greenwald.
Yeah.
Of course, Glenn Greenwald's I'm not quite the same thing as Glenn Greenwald because he's a famous journalist. But him, and even like his husband, because he's gay, his family got harassed. They had their computers and laptops and stuff taken away. Scott Ritter, some of these guys, God bless them for trying to get the truth out there and build good relations with other countries. But some of these guys like Scott Ritter, I mean, I think they're more trusting of the American government than I am. I'm just like, well, if they just locked me up, what could I do about it? I don't trust the system like they do.
No, they could definitely, because you
think
you'd be labeled a terrorist.
If they took away my phone, threw me in a basement, what could I do about it? I'd be like, well, it's against violating my constitutional rights. Well, do those guys care? I don't trust the system.
Yeah.
These guys trust the system more than I do. So in Scott Ritter's case, had a happy ending, fortunately, but he was on a plane to go to a conference because he was going back and forth. He was actually on a plane to go to, I think it was St. Petersburg. These State Department guys went on the plane, escorted him out, and took his passport. And so he was just stuck. But after Trump, So what happened with Scott Ritter? It had a happy ending. After Trump, he didn't ever get his passport back. But what happened was he applied for a new one. That was what I think he said on one of his videos. He was able to had a happy ending. He was able to get a new passport. Yeah. But that's got to think about it. Because if they take away your documents, what can you do realistically?
Yeah. I mean, it doesn't matter if you're not doing anything wrong. Like, that's besides the point. If they don't like you, they will figure out a way to accuse you of something and then use that accusation as a basis.
They can find something.
Or they'll manufacture.
I don't want to sound like an Alex Jones crazy conspiracy theorist, but I think they can put stuff on your computer. I mean, there's no I'm not an IT guy. I don't think that's difficult to do. Like you know what I'm saying? Like if they want to put you in jail, we don't care. We need to find something. They can put some crap on your computer and say, look, we found it. And then, it's the same. It's no different than putting coke in your car, right? When the cops search your car and they want to arrest you, they find coke in your car. I think the same thing.
Doubt.
They just
so I'm glad we have a very low profile.
And what's funny about it, they'll say that about Russia, like Brittany, what was her name? Brittany Griner.
Yeah.
Who came to Russia and she had weed on her and they arrested her. It was like, oh, well, it was planted. But they don't care about Brittany Griner. But yeah, so that's why I didn't travel back for it. It's just like I don't want to play that game of, especially because I think I mentioned it on the show a couple of times, but I was actually on a list as a Russian propagandist, actually. So if you've heard of NewsGuard is a independent nonprofit that received a DoD a couple different government contracts under Biden to combat disinformation. So immediately after that special operation or invasion, whatever you want to call it, started in spring 2022, I had this crazy Lithuanian woman messaging me with all these questions on my email. And she published these articles on NewsGuard. They're still there as far as I know. I'm on this list of Kremlin mouthpieces.
Wow.
So it's... Oh, and so we have another question here. Okay, so we have a couple, actually. Systems guy here. So, yeah. Adam is agreeing with me. Yeah, with IT, they can backdoor.
They turn you into a commie furry, and it would be easy.
They can put whatever. Yeah, I mean, there's no reason to think they can't do that. And then Ramisha has a question.
Assuming you're not already a commie furry, I don't know.
Next question, mine. Now you announced a Russian citizen. Well, so that's just it. I'm not a Russian citizen yet. I'm just a resident. I am.
As of 2 weeks
Um,
ago.
yes. So one thing I don't like. So in general, I agree with Republicans about border policies. I think it's insane to. Well, I mean, because for why corporations do that? Why do the corporations want tens of millions of people from poorer countries? Because they want to break up unions. They want to pay people less. So in general, I agree with the idea that that the USA needs border security and even to just deport people who don't need to be there. But one thing I don't like about, even as someone who's very kind of anti-mass immigration, I don't like how fickle U.S. government is, especially under Trump, with their. Because I think when you have an agreement with the United States government, they need to honor it. So if I have a student visa, so if I'm a Chinese person, for example, I have a student visa to attend Harvard or whatever. I think it's reasonable to expect the U.S. government to honor it and then not just say, oh, well, we don't like you anymore. We're going to put you on the next plane to China that you have to pay for out of your own pocket. Same day flight back to China. Xinjiang is like, well, we don't like you because you're an evil Chinese communist, whatever. I don't like that. I think when you have a document from that, an agreement between you, the individual, and that government, they should honor it at least for the. They might say we're not going to renew this document with you because we don't really feel like you're desirable. That's one thing, but to actually during this periods that you're supposed to be allowed to live in this country, they change their mind. I don't like that. So we have a couple other questions. Do I drive in Russia? So that's a great question. So no, because I thought for 2 years I thought I would have to pass the Russian exam. And so I was studying Russian, I was studying like the test questions and stuff. Then I found out on the embassy website of all places, if you have an American driver's license and you're an American citizen, you can drive in Russia. The problem was at that point when I found that out, my current driver's license, American driver's license, was expired, so I had to order a new one. Luckily, the state of Iowa will do online registration. You don't have to go to the DMV. You can go on their website and get a renewed ID without an appointment. They'll just mail it to your address. So I got it mailed to my parents' address, but then I had to get it sent to myself in Russia. Now, there are services that will mail packages and letters from the USA to Russia. But for some reason, because it was a personal document, the companies I talked to didn't want to do it. They would ask, I would say, hey, can you mail me a letter? They're just like, sure, what is it? I'm like, well, it's not, and I would specify, it's not a credit card. It's not anything to do with finances. It's just an ID. And they're like, oh, we don't want to do that. What I ended up doing is I got it mailed to a friend who is in Armenia. And then she brought it on her next trip to Moscow. She brought it with her on the plane. And I was.
How long ago was that?
This was a couple weeks ago. So.
Okay.
Well, and so I was going to buy a car, and then that big. So what happened? It's actually a funny story. So I was like, okay, now that I have a driver's license, I can actually buy a car. Because up to this point, we've been taking buses and trains to Crimea, across the Crimean Bridge, which also means we have to leave the animals at home because those trains and buses they're just not great for animals. It's a long trip. I was like, great, now I have a driver's license, I can buy a car, and next time we can I can put the animals in the car and just drive myself. So I transferred the money to Bitcoin, and right after that, the Bitcoin crash happened. So I'm stuck waiting for that money to recover its value before. So I think in January I will have a car and I'll be driving around.
Do they drive on the British side of the road or the United States side of the road?
It's the normal side of the road. Yeah.
Okay, normal. That's interesting.
Japan, I think, is the country that drives backwards like in Britain. I think it's Japan. Don't quote me on that. Okay, what else? Oh, that's the last question. Okay, guys, what else? What else? We still have a big audience.
Oh, I was just about to hope you were doing well, Billy. But okay, thank you. But yeah, so Ian, I'm not doing well. I am famished and low blood sugared. So let me.
Why don't you say your goodbyes, and I will
Okay.
and I will just hang on for another minute just to see
Okay.
if we have.
No, thanks for inviting me to join your live stream. I will jump off, and then I'm going to try not to hit end the stream for everyone. Let me just. I think it'll keep going if I do this.
Log out, or even just close the window. Yeah, bye, Billy Bob. Take care.
So I'll see you. Yeah, maybe next week Tuesday. Okay, bye.
Yeah, see you then. Okay, all right, guys. So it's just me now. Great. It was a great chat. It was great to have Billy Bob on. What other questions do we have? And also topics, because we can do this every week. Also, what topics of interest? What questions do we have? Do we have anything? All right. So again, guys, thanks for listening to me. Thanks for all of the feedback. Thanks for the participation. And I was surprised by. I was wondering how much turnout we'd have today. I was pleasantly surprised by how many people show up. So I greatly appreciate it. And thank you. And I will see you soon. Look in the YouTube description. You will see the other websites. So if you're not already following me on one of them, you can go ahead and follow me, and you will see updates for upcoming streams. Thanks so much, and take care.